We are back. It is Couch Potato Diaries' 1000th episode, and in classic CPD fashion, we got NHL, NBA, UFC, AEW, WWE, all to talk about today, so let's get right into it. The 1000th episode of Couch Potato Diary starts right now. Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for hanging out today. Yes, 1,000 episodes deep. So naturally, we're probably going to have some technical issues along the way. But for right now, thank you all so much for hanging out today. Yes, we are streaming this live on twitch.tv/primetimepk as well over on YouTube, youtube.com/@couchpotato Diary. And it's all presented by Sea of Dead. Head over to seaofdead403.ca. Get that great Calgary swag. We got the Cannons gear right here. So go check out all the great Calgary stuff with Sea of Dead. We got Toxic in the chat. We got Tall John also in the Twitch chat. Let's go. Toxic saying this is like a reunion. Yeah, it's good to get everyone back together here today. Tall John, so at 1000th, does it upgrade to a poutine? We'll see. Well, yeah, around there. Yeah, we get a you get a free large soda with it, or something along those lines. But yeah, no, thank you guys so much for hanging out today. A lot of stuff to get into, so why don't we jump into it? There is just a couple of days left in the NHL's regular season, but there's still a lot of drama to be had. Let's break down what we're still watching for in the final couple of days of this NHL season. So, the NHL's season wraps up later this week, and we still have a little bit to be decided. Now, recording this Monday before the games get going, so some of these things might get figured out by the end of today here, so maybe not the most evergreen segment to do to kick off 1000th episode, but I do think there are a couple of things worth watching here, and even some of these will be noteworthy here as the week goes on. But we're starting with the Atlantic Division, and how does that top three stack up? The Buffalo Sabres with a chance to wrap up top spot in the division. Tall John is away in Ad World. Apologies. I probably should have timed that out a little bit better. But the Atlantic Division, you have Buffalo has a chance to wrap it up tonight here on Monday. That home ice advantage in this division, I think, is going to be important. It doesn't get as much OMG as the Central does with Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota all at the top of it. But Buffalo, Tampa Bay, and Montreal is quite the gauntlet to have to go through to get out of the Atlantic when you look at what the other side is going to be doing over in the Metro, and getting that number one spot in the division and getting that opportunity to play a wild card team. And they're going to be difficult, right? Like either Boston or Ottawa is going to be a bit of a difficult challenge, but I would say both of those teams would power right below where the top three are. Like, I think it is an appropriate top three in that division. And so to not have to deal with Montreal, Tampa Bay, or Buffalo, I guess, if Montreal were able to get it, in that first round matchup is very, very important. So it's been an amazing story with the Buffalo Sabres all season long, and they have a chance to cap it all off with a division title. Up next is the last spot in the Metro, and a team that has kind of come out of nowhere the last little while to snag it is the Philadelphia Flyers. They are a win away from wrapping that spot up, but you look at the potential matchups, because the one who gets that last spot ends up getting the matchup with Sidney Crosby in the first round. It's either one more dance with the Philadelphia Flyers, which is a whole lot of fun, one more matchup with Ovechkin and the Capitals, or a game against an upstart, or a series, against an upstart Columbus Blue Jackets team. Either way that shakes out is really, really interesting. Philadelphia, obviously, that they have the edge, and again, while by the time you're hearing this or watching this, they may have it wrapped up. But the hockey that they have been playing this season has been, or this back part here has been really, really impressive. And just a team that's kind of come out of nowhere, and Dan Vladar being the one to backstop that team to a potential top three spot in the Metro. Did not have that on the bingo card for this upcoming season. Another storyline to watch these last couple of days is the last dance of Alex Ovechkin. We don't know if he's going to retire at the end of the season. a lot of stuff is starting to feel pretty final about it, right? And he, for as flashy and as showy as he has been, he isn't necessarily one to do like the big year-long retirement tour. So it has always felt like this was going to be the last season, and I kind of wonder if they made a big deal about 1,000 goals between regular season and playoffs. If they made that big of a deal out of it, because we don't think he's going to get to 1,000 in the regular season. So let's just celebrate this milestone and do it that way. But an incredible career for Alex Ovechkin, but I do think we're seeing the last couple of games of it. And like, we all love a good retirement tour, right? We're going to talk pro wrestling here in just a little bit. Pro wrestling loves a retirement tour these days. But I do think we already did that with him basically last season when he was going for Wayne Gretzky's record. He has certainly, I think we have started to see that decline. And now he's declined to a 31 goal scorer. But you are starting to see that decline a little bit. I do think that he's probably... I do think that this is it for him. Tall John in the chat saying Alex the Great is, I think is done. I would take the over on that bet. Yeah, I think he's done. I think this is it. Now, I think he's done NHL. Maybe he goes off into to the KHL in Russia and can play there till he's 100. But I think for the NHL version of Alex Ovechkin, I think this is probably it. And yeah, toxic, like only 30 goals. CJ was talking on his show that, like, if this was a guy 10 years younger and he's coming off of a 31-goal season, he's going into free agency, he'd be the hottest free agent in the world, right? But it's because of his age and what he has been before that you see, he's fallen off so much. But yeah, it's kind of wild to feel like this could be it, you know, because you always think you get that one last year, but I think this is probably that last year. And Washington, everything is pointing to them knowing, right? Like they make the Carlson trade. They're going in a younger direction. They've made some great moves. Like, I don't think it's going to be a massive teardown or anything, but they're starting to look at the future. And I think that future does not include Alex Ovechkin. Tall John saying the Yager move, 100%. I think he does the Yager move where he just plays around in Europe until he's 55 years old, and we have to wait to induct him into the Hall of Fame for 5 years after his retirement or whatever it is. So it's, I think that's definitely the direction that he's going to go. And then the last thing I'm looking for is Pacific Division movement in this last week. You could still see that, like, the Edmonton Oilers could be a wild card team, which would set up, like, the best from a matchup standpoint. And obviously, we're coming to you from Calgary, so there isn't a lot of sympathy held for the Oilers here. The best slate of matchups that you would get is if the Kings go on a heater, which they've been on already, and they play the Kraken, the Canucks, and the Flames to close out the season. So they go on a run. They move up into a top 3 spot in the Pacific. The Oilers fall out, and then the first round would be Dallas against Minnesota, LA against Anaheim, Vegas, Utah, and Edmonton going up against the Colorado Avalanche. Like, just money every night. That would be absolutely incredible to get that one locked in. So I think that would be golden if we could get that. But where are these teams going to finish? And like, that last wildcard spot is not a pleasant one because you got to take on Colorado in the first round. So trying to get out of that and into the Pacific side of the bracket is going to be very important for one of these teams. Or for a couple of these teams. This is going to be really, really interesting to see how it kind of all shakes out here in the last little bit. So those are the stories that I'm looking at here going into this last few days of the NHL regular season. A couple more from the chat on Twitch. I almost gave out the 960 text line here, but Tall John, I think his ability to play and give out before he gets to 1,000 regular season goals. I agree. Like 1,000, that's 2 more seasons, right? Like it's too much. I don't think he's going to be able to get to that one. So recognize that, celebrate the playoff plus regular season one. He's the greatest goal scorer of all time, and we can just move on from that. And yes, toxic. The Flames would be begging for a 30-goal scorer. Might get a couple 20s. That's something, right? Like Coleman's right there. Coronado's right there. Frost has already gotten it. So at least there's that. But yes, no, it is funny that, like, if you did the Yager thing with Ovechkin, he all of a sudden becomes the best goal scorer on the Flames by a ton, even though he has fallen off again, quote unquote. Edmonton against San Jose, the best matchup for the Oilers anyway. Like, that would be a blast. To have that if San Jose could get in. I feel like they're out of it now. That would have been a lot of fun. But for Edmonton, yeah, that would have been an ideal. Although the way Anaheim's playing right now, like they were the team that I was afraid of for the other Pacific teams a couple of weeks ago, but they have just really dragged toward the playoffs here. And I don't know if they have enough veteran guys that you can just flip that switch going into the postseason, but we'll see what happens with that. A lot of intriguing matchups anyway, the way that this could all kind of play out here over the next little while. But yeah, keep the chats coming. We're going to move off the NHL, but if you want to keep talking hockey, throw them in the chat and we can get back to it in just a little bit. And if you're watching this after the fact, let me know what you guys are watching for in the last few days of this NHL's regular season. If you are watching on YouTube, would really like it if you could help out and hit that subscribe button. Hit like as well. The buttons, they're like right beside each other. Just right there. Boom. Perfect. And leave a comment. Like I said, what are you looking for from the NHL season the last little while? Also, those on Twitch, if you could give a follow or a subscribe, that would be amazing. But just watching means the world to me, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. A couple more here. Tall John, if the Oilers make it past Colorado in round one, in theory, are they favored to make the final, even with Dallas or Minnesota? I wouldn't think so. Like, I would put Dallas or Minnesota ahead of them. Yeah, so I think that they would be firmly planted as the number 4 in that central kind of hierarchy. I would have either of those teams ahead of them. Now, if you got past that one, then I think it's an easier time against whoever comes out of the Pacific side to end up winning it. But I think that is even if you beat the top dog, there are still a couple really good teams there that I think would just be a step above Edmonton at this particular time. Let's move into the world of basketball now. We now know the teams that will at least try to play their way into the playoffs and then the other playoff teams. So let's take a look at what we know right now anyway, playoffs-wise in the NBA as we kick off, or tip off, I guess, our NBA playoff preview. So the playoffs are here, and the play-in gets going on Tuesday evening. This isn't going to be a deep, in-depth breakdown, just a couple quick thoughts on the series that we know right now. Let's start in the Western Conference. The Phoenix Suns and the Portland Trail Blazers are the 7-8 matchup. A couple of really good stories. Storyline-wise, the two play-in games, I think, match up in the West with Phoenix against Portland and the Clippers against Golden State, where you have Phoenix and Portland kind of, they're a little bit different. Like, Portland's kind of this younger team on the rise. Phoenix, no one really saw this coming after the Durant disaster and everything like that. But for both of these teams to be here is a really cool story. I do find this to be a pretty even matchup. Maybe even the most of the 4 play-ins that we get. But I kind of like Phoenix here. I think they are just a slight step above the Portland Trail Blazers. I don't think either of these teams has a real shot of upsetting the apple cart in the West, but I think Phoenix gets a pretty good performance here. That they do have a bit more playoff experience than Portland. I think that's going to win out. And then you look at Clippers against Golden State, and it's a couple of veteran teams trying to hold on, just trying to drag this thing across the finish line. I like the Clippers here. I think if Kawhi is healthy, he's the best player in this, even with Steph coming back and everything like that. The injuries have ravaged Golden State the last couple of last couple of months, last couple of seasons. I just don't think they have enough in the tank, even with the Clippers maybe being a little bit shorthanded. But we've seen Kawhi take over in these spots. Now, we've seen Curry take over in these spots too. So we'll see what he has and what he can do here in this series. But I like the Clippers there in that spot. I guess it would be Portland against the Clippers. I think I would go Clippers there too. Again, just with Kawhi, just to be able to get it across. But then who knows if we're asking 2 games in a row here. So we will see. The West proper matchups that we have right now, Lakers against Houston. This would be a really intriguing series if Luka and Reeves were healthy. They are not. And even if they are able to check back in, I don't know how much I would trust it. Houston was a team that I thought could win a championship if they were healthy, but they've just lost so much of what I think would make them dangerous. And I don't know if they ever fully answered a lot of the questions around those injuries. They are still a very good offensive rebounding team, and they're still a very good offensive team. But when it comes down now to playoff time, comes down to those crunch time moments, even against the Lakers here, like, who is leading the ball up the floor? Who is getting them into that offense? And can they survive without an Adams in that spot? I think they get a good matchup here with the Lakers. Dominating has certainly had his moments this year, but I think that's one that they can kind of exploit. The no Luka and Reeves does take a lot of the drama out of this one, though. So I do like Houston in this one. Denver against Minnesota. I find this one really interesting because these are two teams that have started to build up a bit of a rivalry over the last couple of seasons with playoff matchups and stuff like that. And they both have clear ways that they would win. But like for Denver, their offense is great. For Minnesota, offense is good, defense is great, right? And then when you look at the flip side of those matchups, again, Denver is better on offense, and Minnesota, I think, is taking a step back on offense, even with what I thought was a good trade deadline. Minnesota is better on defense, and I think Denver has taken a step back on defense. So each side, their strength has gotten stronger, but in the end, it's still Jokic. And Murray is back. They're working pretty well. If Watson can give them any kind of minutes coming off of an injury, they've really worked on improving their depth. It hasn't really hit in the way that I think a lot of us thought it would this season. The MPJ trade hasn't really hit the way we thought it would this season. Love the offseason that they had, and they're still third, but it does feel like there's a bit more of a ceiling on this team this season than there is in the past, but I don't think that ceiling includes bumping up against Minnesota, so I like the Nuggets in this spot. Philadelphia taking on Orlando in the East now in the 7-8. Wildly disappointing season with some of the injury issues, and you can say that for both sides, but for Orlando, they have to win this. And like, unless they go to the conference finals, the coach is getting fired anyway, but this has been such a disaster after all they gave up for Bane and everything there. And I think there's honestly a lesson with that and with how Bridges is doing with the Knicks. And it's something I've got caught up in where you have like Bane to the Magic made so much sense because this team could defend like no other. And they just had trouble getting the offense going. And Bane felt like it could be the final piece for this offense to be good enough with a championship caliber defense to have them have a real shot this year in the East. And it hasn't worked. And I kind of compare it to Bridges with the Knicks, where they gave up a ton to bring this guy in, but it felt like at the time they were maybe a Bridges away from being a legitimate championship contender. And so it's one of those ones that it ends up being worth it if you can go win that championship, but you still have to give the appropriate value in a trade, because now it looks like just a disaster with the Bane deal. And the Bridges one is getting a lot of fans out in New York pretty frustrated as well. I don't know why the Knicks are getting a drive-by in this part, but just something I've been thinking of with this. I still think, again, it all depends on Philadelphia's health and everything. I think like playoff-wise, Orlando can really lock things down on defense. I just don't trust them enough to be able to score in the big moments where Philadelphia, I think, again, depending on health and all of that, has guys that at least can do that. So I do think Philly wins this one here. Charlotte against Miami. Charlotte's been one of the best stories of the back half of the season. Can they do it under the playoff lights against Heat culture and Bam Adebayo, who can put up 83 points in a game? We'll see about that. I don't think either of these teams beats Orlando in the second part of the play-in, though. The two series that we do know about in the East, Cleveland taking on Toronto. The Raptors, love them. They've struggled against high-level teams this season. I think the big matchup here for the Raptors is how do they handle the guards with the Cleveland Cavaliers? On radio out here in Calgary, we had Kai Gamage on and talking about that matchup specifically. Like, quickly, he's not the worst defender, but he's not a lockdown guy by any stretch of the imagination. RJ, I think you could probably put him in that kind of category as well. And then going up against Harden and Donovan Mitchell, that doesn't feel ideal, where the young guys you have off the bench probably feel like the better lockdown guys, but are you going to really make that big of a move to start them? So I'll be interested to see how Toronto can kind of match up in this series with those guys and how they try to play this. Cleveland is a better team. No question about that. It is just Cleveland has really stumbled when it gets to playoff time, and James Harden doesn't give you a whole lot more confidence around that. So we'll see what can kind of come out of that. But for Toronto, if they're going to advance beyond this point, they're going to have to hope that Cleveland slips on a banana peel a couple of times. Knicks against Atlanta. I think the wings of the Hawks and how great they've been able to play in this back part of the season, that is going to give New York a bit of a scare. But I do think there's going to be enough moments where the Knicks can kind of match those guys, and then there's just nothing that can compare to Brunson and Cat over on the Atlanta after that portion. So it's been a fun story for Atlanta. You guys know, if you've watched any of my stuff, I'm not the biggest Trae Young fan. So it's been fun to see this team step up without him and make this run here into the playoffs. But again, I just don't think they're as good as the New York Knicks are. So those are just my thoughts on where we're at playoffs wise right now. I am sure some fan bases disagree with me. So hit me up in the comments or in the chat if you're watching this live, and we can have at it in there. Tall John over on Twitch. This is not a shot at the Jazz, but probably a good year for them to be done. And Utah don't have to try and schedule balance two teams in that arena, giving the Mammoth crew a chance to focus on ice quality and environment with me expecting a sold out standing room only playoff game. Yeah, you're right. Like that would have been quite the thing to kind of balance in year one or year two for Utah. Trying to make all of that work, that would be a lot. And you're fine to take shots at Utah. This has been a pretty despicable tanking season for them, and I'm hoping that they're done with this tanking thing with the acquisition of Triple J at the deadline, and probably one more good draft pick here to go for them. So you can take shots at Utah. It's totally fine. All right, so again, that's going to wrap it up here for the basketball talk. But if you got more hoops that you want to chat with, throw it in the chat, whether you're watching on Twitch or YouTube if you're watching live, and we can keep that conversation going, or I can bounce back to it anyway once I'm wrapped up with whatever segment I am in at the time. And if you are listening to this but want Couch Potato Diary with you in a bit more of a convenient fashion wherever you go, just search the Couch Potato Diary podcast. Again, this is the 1000th episode of the Couch Potato Diary podcast, and it's available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your pods. Let's move into the fight game now. UFC 327 is behind us. There is a new UFC light heavyweight champion, and he won that belt in the most unbelievable way possible. Let's talk about it. So, UFC 327, now in the books, and it goes down with a wild finish. If you have not seen this yet, do yourself a favor. Once this video is done, go check it out, because it is unbelievable. Yuri Prochazka against Carlos Ulberg for the championship. Back part of the first round, Prochazka throws a kick, Ulberg kind of steps back, and you can see his entire lower leg, just a bunch of stuff go boom all of a sudden, and like it looked like a bone maybe, turns out it's just like a tendon that kind of ruptures at the same time, like there's a big of a ripple, like there's a whole lot of stuff in his leg just kind of falls apart at once, and he goes to take a step back, and there's a bit of a and oh no. Oh, this isn't going to go well. And so Prochazka comes in. Ulberg is able to just tattoo him and get the finish on one leg to end up being the champion. An unbelievable moment for Ulberg, who has been progressing his way through and working his way up to the top. Deserved this opportunity. We talked about it on the podcast earlier this week. Last week, I guess. Deserved the opportunity and made the most of it, even under the most weird of circumstances that you could get in a fight. How many times have we seen someone's leg just kind of die on them like that, and they just kind of crumple down to the mat? And I'm not questioning the toughness of anyone else. It's just the focus, the toughness, and everything with Ulberg there was remarkable that he was able to pull that off. So, first of all, I want to give credit to Ulberg for an all-time moment. But, as has been discussed a couple of times in a couple of different spots, this is an all-time choke job for Yuri Prochazka, and I don't know how you look at it in any other way. When you are coming in off of a couple of tough title losses already, and now the one guy who has been in your way the whole time is gone, and the division feels free and clear for you to get that chance, I don't know how you screw this up. And I get he said, oh, I showed mercy and da-da-da-da-da. That wasn't showing mercy. That you got caught, man. He didn't let up, I didn't think. He didn't like, oh, is your leg okay? Boom, boom. Like that, it wasn't Victor Ortiz, right, against Floyd Mayweather, where Ortiz headbutted him, and Ortiz was like, oh man, sorry about that, and Mayweather just caught him with the cleanest two-punch combo a human has ever hit another human with. This wasn't that. It was Yuri may have lost focus and was like, oh, I'm going to be able to tag him now, and just like kind of lost his mind on it. But that's the opposite of mercy. That's like, oh, I'm going to mercy put you out here. We're going to end this thing. If Yuri can just like keep his head about him, keep a regular game plan, and just not get punched into the shadow realm, he wins the championship because Ulberg's not going to be able to walk to his corner, let alone come back for the second round. So to me, Ulberg, amazing moment. All the credit in the world to him. But I do think you have to look at this as just a gigantic choke job here for Yuri Prochazka. The other part of it now is, yeah, like Ulberg was able to get this great moment. Probably going to be a bit till he's fighting again, right? Like that, just the way humans work, I think that leg's going to take some time to recover. So I don't know what they're going to do with the championship now, because you just had a vacant title. That's what they were fighting for, because the previous champ went up to heavyweight. And now are you going to have an interim title before the unified title is defended even once? Is Ulberg's leg maybe not as bad as it looked when the whole lower part of it just went kaboom? We'll see. But I think this throws probably the most famous division in UFC history into flux right now, even more so than we had about 72 hours ago. But just an all-time moment on that UFC card at the end of it, on what was a bit of a weird night. You already had an illness or a slight injury move Tyra and Van to UFC 328, which makes that card awesome. And the rest of the night, it was just like, it was weird. Like Paulo Costa gets a win. There was a whole lot of fights that were just kind of there and kind of exciting, but not super exciting, but kind of exciting. It was a weird night for the UFC, and it ends in the weirdest way possible. So what do you guys want to see next at 205 pounds? And am I being unfair to Yuri saying that this is an all-time choke job? Let me know in the comments or in the live chat if you're watching live with us here today. And yes, it's been a bit since we've been able to stream this live on Couch Potato Diary, but we are back doing the live thing here and going to try to, again, a little bit more this week. It's WrestleMania week. Going to get into the wrestling talk here in a second for those watching live. But yeah, we're going to stream live twitch.tv/primetimepk and also youtube.com/@couchpotatodiary. Again, if you have any more UFC thoughts, throw them into the chat for those watching live, and I will get to those. But we are going to move now into the wrestling world, as it is quite the time in pro wrestling. Obviously, it's WrestleMania season, and everyone has a lot of focus on the WWE, but AEW's pay-per-view certainly commanded a lot of attention. The problem is that they may have set the bar a little too high for themselves. Still an amazing night, but let's talk about it. So, yes, AEW Dynasty going down in Canada, out in Vancouver on Sunday night. First of all, love me a good Sunday pay-per-view. I know Saturday has kind of become the thing, but just there was something about like getting ready on Sunday during the day, watching the Raptor game for a little bit, and just like, you know what, this is what Sunday was. You know, you kind of live your day on Sunday, get stuff ready for the next week, and then at the end of the night, boom, pay-per-view is on. Let's go have some wrestling. I liked it. And now I liked it better with WWE because you have Raw on Monday and you just get to go right into it. But still, there's something a little nostalgic about a Sunday pay-per-view. And it was a really, really good show. I do think they've set the bar a little too high for themselves as of late. And I don't know if they got to that high of a level. And I'm not just talking about like the blood and guts stuff on pay-per-view and the death matches and everything there, but just the quality of in-ring competition that they have had on Dynamite has been a lot for them to kind of live up to. And this show, again, had some amazing in-ring work, but it just, because of the level that they have set on Dynamite, it felt like a really, really good episode of Dynamite, which I don't think is what you want from your pay-per-view, especially when you've just had one. So it's tough because they have obviously made an effort to try to set that bar high for themselves this year. And I think on the last pay-per-view, you were able to get a few things kind of manufactured with like Copeland coming back and a couple of other big returns and debuts and stuff like that. And this one, honestly, like with MJF making his way up to the stage at the end of the night, I was kind of expecting, okay, here comes big reveal. I don't know who it's going to be, but big reveal. And then he just kind of goes down and that's the end of the show. And again, it's a good show. It's a really good show. But there was just part of me that was like, that's not normally what AEW does on pay-per-view. So just a couple of thoughts I had there. But overall, like the main event, we're not going to get into the whole card. Just to be perfectly honest, haven't watched the whole thing yet. Kind of joined it in progress on Sunday. And so want to kind of get a feel for how everything else was. But want to talk about the main event. I do think MJF winning makes a lot of sense. I think there are just more options right now for him. When we did that whole thing where it was Swerve and Swerve and Omega and Hangman all kind of standing around looking for their title shot. You kind of saw laid out what the next few months were going to look like for MJF. Now having Darby Allin win the number one contender match early in the night, I think that kind of made it make a bit more sense too. Kenny Omega, it kind of struck me. Like he's walking down to the ring, he has the old music, he's standing there, and no, he is not what he once was. You had a bit of a stumble early on in this match. Still phenomenal, like still one of the best wrestlers in the world, but it did kind of hit like, man, this was one of the best wrestlers on the planet, and I think you could start to have the conversations of where he fits in all time in professional wrestling in terms of in-ring ability and everything like that. So it felt like a really, really cool deal to watch him on pay-per-view again, but he doesn't need the belt. I would like to see him have maybe a babyface run here with the championship, but there's also a lot of guys who I would like to see in that spot, maybe a little bit more than him at this point in his career. So that's where AEW is at, balancing some of the vets with the not quite as vets right now and how to get the most out of it. And one of the interesting ones now is Darby Allin, who will get the opportunity against MJF at Spring Breakthrough. I think it's Spring Breakthrough that they're calling it on Wednesday in Seattle. It's in Darby Allin's hometown. I don't think that him winning makes a ton of sense. I do think it's interesting given that it is in his hometown, but I don't know if it makes a ton of sense to just do it with no real build. I think if you wanted to do it and build it up over a couple of weeks, months even, have Darby lose by way of nefarious means for MJF and then him get his rematch at a pay-per-view and then get the win there. I think that does kind of check the box maybe a little bit better because I do think Darby should be the world champion at some point, and we'll talk about it later in the week. Looking at the rest of the week or looking at the rest of the kind of calendar into the summer here for AEW, I do believe that a lot is going to be building towards Will Ospreay winning the title at Wembley. And I think it means more if it's coming off of MJF, right? So not to just like lock your champion in for a while and now none of the matches really mean anything, but I do wonder if that's kind of where they're going. So I don't know if the title change makes sense, but MJF winning here made all the sense in the world. And I think now an interesting story to be told with Darby and to see where they kind of go from there. But overall, like I said, a really good night of wrestling from what I've seen already. It wasn't the like, oh my God, show of the year that AEW has been constantly churning out as of late. What do you guys think? Am I underselling this a little bit? And do you think Darby Allin could be the next AEW champion? Let me know in the comments or in the chat if you are watching this live, and we can keep the conversation going there. And while you're at it, hit that share button. Again, trying to grow this thing, whether it be on YouTube, or in the podcast. Share the episode, share the clip here with your friends. Let's keep the wrestling convos going. Because again, trying to grow this thing beyond 1,000 episodes. It's now time to take our look at WrestleMania. It has been a much discussed build to WrestleMania. And I know a lot of people in wrestling would say, oh, you got him talking. No such thing as bad publicity. Not a lot of the talk's been positive. So with just a few days left before the show of shows, the showcase of the immortals, WrestleMania, let's take a look at where this show is at, where this build is at for 2026 with our opening bell. Just started talking about WrestleMania, and in the chat, Tall John, Oba, Brock. Yes. It is so funny that, like, we put all these different things and all these different stories and all the try to be the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with the strings attaching to everything, and the best built, most anticipated match on the show. The entirety of the build is this guy's huge. This guy's huge. This guy doesn't lose a whole lot, but this guy has just powerbombed him to hell a couple of times, and now they're gonna have a match at WrestleMania, and it is the Big E, big meaty men smack and meat, and that's it. That's what we got. They haven't got personal about family. Oba has said like 8 words in this entire build, but he's done the strut down to the ring, and then he's beat the tar out of the dude that everyone likes to see the tar get beat out of, and that's been the build. And so it's a nice reminder that sometimes simple works. So, and look, WWE has run into problems of just like, hey, these are 2 big dudes, we're going to put them in the ring at WrestleMania. That's gone poorly before, but sometimes when you got the right 2 big dudes, it's great. Oh, it's so good. And I'm like, it might sound like I'm mocking. I'm not. This has been great. I've loved it. It's been so simple. It's been so perfect. And it's the match I'm looking forward to the most at WrestleMania. It is this generation's superpowers match. Yeah, like you can, like, everyone knows the way we want it to go, but you can make a very compelling case for it to not go that way. Not to me, I'll yell at you, but you could, if you wanted to, make a compelling case for it to go the other way. So that's obviously been the best built match of the program, right? Like, there's no question about what has been the most exciting, best build so far. In terms of the rest of it, it does feel like the McAfee thing was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think in a vacuum, I was talking because my wife was gone for a week, and I showed her like, hey, this is what happened. What do you think? She said, it's interesting. Like it got a reaction. It's Pat, and he's got a lot of charisma, and I think there's an interesting story you can tell. So I'd like to see what happens. And that is how I would view this, right? Like I think it was maybe not the guy we were expecting. A lot of people wondering if it was going to be The Rock or a Stephanie McMahon. I went through the WWE roster on their thing today. Shane McMahon is still listed on the active roster, so there was maybe some thought it could be him. And so when it's Pat McAfee instead of The Rock, there's a bit of a But I think the way he did it, the promo wasn't the greatest, but I think you can kind of tell a story around it. It would be, in a lot of other builds, it would be a story where I would say, let's just see how it plays out, because I think there's a really cool way that they could go with it. The problem is that, aside from Oba and a couple things, is the whole fucking show is, well, let's see. There, you could go somewhere with it. This could be an interesting story. You could, if you finish it the right way, you could have something big out of this. There's very few, this is gonna rock, this story has been great. There's been a lot of, well, in theory. And that, I think, is the problem, is that you are already at a bit of a tipping point anyway, and then you have this McAfee thing, and the promo doesn't exactly go the way you want it to from a fan standpoint, and now it's just like, all right, F this, F that, F everything. Done with it. No, I hate it. So it feels like if this was a couple of years ago and everything else was clicking, this would be a story that you're like, okay, let's just see how it goes, because we're rolling with the bloodline, Cody's story, and all of that. This is great. But now it's just it's like the 5th celebrity that we're going to have on this show, and we're already a little upset about the ticket prices and being in Vegas for another year and then going to Saudi Arabia and taking it away from New Orleans. And it's all these things that have built up, and now this feels like it was the match being placed to the fuse that just made everyone go F this and get really, really frustrated with all of it. And so it has felt a little underwhelming. I think they did pretty good on Raw to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit more. There have been a couple of stories that have been good. We talked about Oba Brock. I think Liv against Stephanie Vaquer has been very well done. And I mean, we'll see how Liv is after getting her head drilled off of Roxy's head last week on Raw. But I think that story has had the appropriate intensity and the build, and that has felt like a WrestleMania feud. It's been really good. I think Drew and Fatu, I'm excited for the match. I understand the high level of intensity that they want to portray in this feud, and because of all the different steps that we've had in it, it makes sense to have all that intensity. It feels too over the top, where the guys are like, well, that was murder, jumping off of the scaffolding, and then they're back the next week, and we're still brawling, and we're still doing all these things, and it's just like, okay, you are making me well aware that this shit's fake right now, you know? So let's just, Chill on that a little bit here. But overall, like I think it's going to be a good show. You know, and I have in my notes here, it feels like the Vince era. And by the way, the people being like, oh, bring Vince back. Like, guys, the shows were objectively horrendous when he was in charge of it all, right? Like, maybe Levesque has kind of run out of ideas and lost his fastball a little bit, but this is still worlds ahead of anything that was going on in the back part of the McMahon thing. And when I say back part, I mean the last decade of the McMahon stuff. So let's not, I mean, like, for human being reasons, the dude's a piece of shit. But for, like creatively, and you think he's just been sitting there for 2 years coming up with good ideas? No, get out of here. So I'm not with that. It does make me think, though. It does remind me. I used to, for those who don't know, used to host a wrestling radio show out here. We called it Combat Central. We did a lot of UFC and boxing stuff too, but we did some wrestling stuff and actually got to interview a lot of really cool people. One of them was Christopher Daniels. And I asked him, what would you take from the comic book world and bring it into the pro wrestling world? And it felt like he kind of paused, was like, oh, okay. And I'm not doing that to toot my own horn as an interviewer, but it was just like he gave a genuinely thoughtful answer. And one of the things he said was, I wonder if you kind of need to let people only have a small chunk of time with it. And I know that's what we made fun of WCW for and Crockett for back in the day, where every 6 months something was changing. But his point was like every 18 months, you only have so many ideas. And so in comics, it's like, okay, we've had this person in charge for a little bit. We've had this person in charge, whether it's the movies or whatever. We've had this person in charge and directing these for a bit. Let's now go to someone else and let them have at least a couple of ideas and try to string it along. And then if it sucks, we can go back to that guy. If it's good, we can kind of keep it rolling. But let's not make someone have to do this for 5-6 years in a row, because at some point you do run out of ideas. And I get that that's kind of the point of a creative room that we now have access to through Unreal. But it does kind of make you wonder, like, maybe it would be good for Levesque to take a bit of a break, because it hasn't been great the last little while, that's for sure. Tall John in the chat. First on Brock and Oba. I want them to let Brock lose to push Oba to the, I'm having trouble reading today. I want them to let Brock push Oba to the limit, even if they let him win for the future storyline. I think there's a couple of interesting things that you could kind of have coming out of it. Hollywood King 310. Hi, it's going well. How are you? That's over in the YouTube chat. But for Tall John, I think, like, there is a world I want Oba to win, and by SummerSlam he's winning the world title. Even by Backlash, you know, like, he gets the next match, whether it's Roman, Punk, whoever. He just, like, give him the title and just go, like, just run with it, like, just take off, beats Brock, keeps rolling, does that thing. I do also wonder if the Gunther Seth story is leading to Gunther wants to retire Brock in Minneapolis. That's what Brock, that's the favor that Gunther wants from Paul Heyman in exchange for this. And so does it make sense to have Brock lose to Oba and then lose to Gunther? I think so, because I want to see this guy. I would prefer it if his retirement match was like Joe Hendry and he's just lost to everyone along the line because blank that guy, right? But I like, you can make somewhat of a case if they want to try to keep Brock strong, but Oba should be the project. He is, as Conrad Thompson on his podcast would say, over like Grover. So just let him be. Let him keep rolling. Let him keep doing his thing and get that win. But I don't want it to be 30 seconds. I kind of want it. I want the start of it. Well, we'll talk about this more in the week, I guess. But what I have right now is the start of this match is Ultimate Warrior, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, WrestleMania 12, where you got this big thing. It's the entrance. Everyone's fired up. Helmsley hits the pedigree and Warrior just pops up. I want that for Brock Oba. Like, you get Oba coming in, Brock just quickly, like 5 seconds, up, F5, boom. Everyone watching would buy it, because the hardcore fan base is like, oh my God, they want Brock to kill this guy, and they want to keep Brock strong. They've had Oba look strong the whole way. Now they're going to even it out for Brock to win. Oh, we hate this. And you would have like the casual wrestling fan being like, oh my gosh, Brock Lesnar, he does this all the time. And then have Oba pop up right away. If you want to do a count of one, fine. I wouldn't even let it get to a cover. I would just eats the F5 and Oba gets up as if it's an arm drag to start the match. And then we just get into WWE 2K26 where everyone has their finishers built up. Like, that's That's how I would start it and just get this thing moving hot. That's kind of what I would look at there for sure. Tall John, lack of ticket sales, McAfee and Ram trucks, etc. Just a bad taste in my mouth after CM Punk drops the bombs about asses in seats. The tickets are slow and they are rubbing it in fans' faces a little bit. Yeah, that whole aspect of it, like you can see. There is a world where you can tweak the McAfee promo and it makes a ton of sense. Like Randy Orton, he's the biggest draw, and what all you guys are doing obviously isn't working because Randy Orton's the draw and ticket sales aren't there. But then to keep kind of hammering at that point, like it should be the subtext of kind of the bigger thing, and it's become the main focus of a lot of that, and that shouldn't be happening with this right now. It just shouldn't. So that is where I think it has kind of rubbed people the wrong way. When it has been about ticket sales and making this company money, and then the hypocrisy of, well, like CM Punk saying, well, get your boss to get the ticket sales down, when obviously like Cody is the face of this company and has been with a lot of stuff. Like it's just, once you get past the surface level of it, and if you want to do like the work shoot stuff, that does lead to those types of like, okay, well, let's look at this in a deeper level, and it falls apart even on like the step below. So I just don't, I get what they're trying to do, but I don't think it's working, and they're not doing it in a very good way. And that's been a little frustrating, I think, for a lot of fans. Absolutely. So it's not great. But again, I think the show's going to be awesome. Like that ladder match is going to be insane. I think we're going to get a really good match out of Punk and Roman. I do think something really interesting is going to happen with Randy and Cody. And I think a lot of the matches are going to be very, very good. It's just the build up to it has not really captured people in the same way that it did a couple of years ago. And it feels like it's been going in that trend here for a little bit. So let me know, again, where you're at on this WrestleMania build as we sit an hour out from Monday Night Raw. That's going to do it for this stream today. We got a lot more coming up with the podcast and with the stream coming up here in the next little bit. Coming up podcast-wise, we're going to have a lot of WrestleMania coverage throughout the week. Tomorrow, going to look at where we were 1 year ago with WrestleMania, go through each match and just see how we've kind of followed it up. Was it worth it or not? I'm going to do a couple of things that I've been thinking about doing for a little bit. I'm excited to try it here on Mania Week. Gonna do best of the rest. So I'm going to try to book a card based entirely on people who aren't on the WrestleMania card and just see, it kind of showcases the depth of what WWE is dealing with right now and what they have. Because honestly, like it's not a WrestleMania. I think I've put together a pretty good card and I'm pretty happy with it. So we're going to do that. And I'm also going to do, I don't want to just call this what would Vince Russo do, but I'm going to do what would be the crazy booking that you could do off of this. Like what is just the wild, insane ideas you could have semi-realistically from this WrestleMania. I want to do that, and then we're going to get into what I would do, what they will do. So a full week of previewing coming for WrestleMania. A lot of that is also going to come on the Twitch side. Want to get the video game stream going. Only 2K25, I know, but want to get the video game stream going a few times this week to just kind of keep that wrestling conversation going. But we're going to have a ton on the Blue Jays. I can't talk about them today. We're going to have a bit more UFC coverage to go here with Couch Potato as well from UFC 327, going into a Canadian card as well. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more on the boxing side. We did an instant reaction of Fury and his fight on Saturday afternoon after that fight was done. So check that out, episode 999. Check it out in podcast form there. So we got a lot more to talk about here. Yes, we're doing video games again here on twitch.tv/primetimepk. But again, thank you guys so much. If this is the first of 1,000 that you have listened to, or if we're batting 100%, 1,000, I guess would be the batting reference. Thank you so much. It has been so much fun these last 1,000 episodes, chatting sports with you guys, figuring out how to do this whole thing and everything there. So if you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see more or less from the show, you can let me know. Any comment section, any chat. You can get me on social media. If you're watching, it's just on the screen right there. I am at Primetime Klein on X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky. We have the email. I haven't plugged that in a really long time, but it is couchpotatodiary@yahoo.com. If you have any thoughts on the show, let me know there. We also, if you want to support the show, hitting that subscribe button, that would be great. on YouTube or hitting like on Twitch. Again, subscribe if you have the means. That would mean the world to me. But just watching is great, and that follow helps us out. There's also a tip jar in the description here on YouTube and on a panel on Twitch, also in the description if you are listening in podcast form. So, it's been awesome. It's crazy to be at 1,000 episodes and still looking to grow this. So, thank you guys so much for being along for the ride. As always, we're presented by Sea of Dead. Head over to seaofdead403.ca and get all this great Calgary swag. Yes, more Blue Jays talk will be coming. There has been some on the YouTube channel, Toxic. It hasn't been positive lately. And some people got very mad at me for not being positive. We got Blue Jays stuff on the YouTube channel and on the podcast. But we'll get more of it live as the season rolls on here. It's a great time in sports. It's this time of year that made me want to do this podcast in the first place. So we're going to keep going strong with it. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the wrestling. Enjoy the hockey. And we'll chat again very, very soon.